I overheard my family discussing my life as if I wasn't in the house. They spoke in calm voices, like everything was already settled. That was the moment I realized I was the only one who didn't know what was coming. I was upstairs in my bedroom, supposedly taking a nap. That's what they thought, anyway. The truth was, I just stretched out on top of the covers with my shoes still on, thinking about how the garbage disposal was making that grinding noise again, and whether I should call someone or just YouTube it like usual. 53 years old, and I was still the guy who fixed things himself because paying someone felt like admitting defeat. The voices drifted up through the heating vent. Our house was built in 1987, back when builders didn't worry much about sound insulation between floors. I could hear everything if I stayed quiet. Usually it was just the TV or someone talking on the phone, nothing worth listening to. This was different. So we're agreed then. That was my son Kyle. 28, worked in property management downtown. He had that tone he used when he wanted to sound older than he was, authoritative. We moved forward with the timeline as discussed. I still think we should wait until after the holidays. My daughter, Amy. 25, recently married to a guy named Trevor who sold insurance and talked too much about golf. It feels rushed. It's already October. Kyle again. If we wait until January, that's another 3 months of his routine. You know how he gets. The longer we give him, the more he'll dig in. I stayed perfectly still on the bed. My heart was doing something strange in my chest, like it was trying to decide whether to speed up or stop completely. He's predictable, that's all I'm saying. Trevor's voice. I knew it was him because he had this habit of starting sentences like he was disagreeing even when he wasn't. Same breakfast every morning, same drive to the hardware store on Saturdays, same everything. We can work with that. Someone laughed. It might have been Amy. Remember when he spent 45 minutes looking for that receipt from 2019? He has them all in those accordion folders, organized by month. He still balances his checkbook, Kyle said. There was something in his voice, not quite mockery, something flatter, clinical. Writes everything down in that ledger, like he doesn't trust the bank's computer system. Which works in our favor, Trevor again. The more set in his ways he is, the easier this gets. He won't see it coming. I heard the scrape of a chair against the kitchen floor. Someone was getting up. Probably Kyle. He never sat still for long. Does he suspect anything? Amy asked. No way. Kyle's footsteps crossed the kitchen. The refrigerator opened. I mentioned the idea last month, remember? Totally casual. He just nodded and said he'd think about it. Then he went back to watching his fishing show. He doesn't think about anything we don't put directly in front of him. The refrigerator closed. A can opened with that pressurized hiss. What about the paperwork? Trevor asked. Already drafted. Kyle's voice was muffled, probably drinking. I've got a guy at the firm who handles this kind of thing all the time. Very standard, very routine. We just need his signature. And if he asks questions? He won't. He never does. Last time he signed something I put in front of him was the refinance, and he didn't even read it. Just asked where to initial. Amy spoke up. That was different, though. That was his idea. He thought it was his idea, Kyle corrected. I suggested it 3 times over 2 months until he brought it up at dinner like he'd just thought of it himself. That's how you handle him. Plant the seed, water it a little, wait. He'll come around thinking it was his choice all along. I could hear them so clearly. Every word, every pause, the casual certainty in their voices. When do you want to do it? Amy asked. 2 weeks, Kyle said. Maybe 3. I'm thinking a weekend. Saturday morning. We all come by for breakfast. Very normal, very routine. Then I'll bring it up. Say I've been looking into some things for him, trying to help him plan ahead. He loves that. Loves when we take initiative, makes him feel like he raised us right. Trevor laughed. It was a quick, sharp sound. He did raise you right. You learned from watching him. He's been managing people his whole life without them knowing it. Except now he's the one being managed, Kyle said. He just doesn't know it yet. There was a silence. Not uncomfortable, just the natural pause of people who understood each other completely. I almost feel bad, Amy said quietly. Don't. Kyle's voice was firm. This is what's best. For him and for us. He's getting older. His judgment isn't what it was. He needs help making decisions, even if he doesn't realize it. We're doing him a favor. A favor that also happens to benefit us, Trevor added. No shame in his voice. Just fact. That's how the best plans work, Kyle said. Everybody wins. He gets security and care. We get what we need to move forward with our lives. Clean and simple. And if he figures it out? Amy asked. He won't, Kyle said. But if he does, it'll be too late. Everything will already be in motion. He'll complain for a week, maybe two, then he'll settle into it. That's who he is. He doesn't like change, but once it happens, he adapts. He always has. More footsteps. Someone else getting up. The sound of the coffee maker starting. I need to head out, Trevor said. Got a thing at 6. Yeah, we should go too, Amy said. I told him we were just stopping by for coffee. If we stay too long, he'll come downstairs and want to chat. God forbid. Kyle's voice was light, joking. He'll want to show us something in the garage, some new tool he bought, or talk about the lawn. They all laughed, not cruel laughter, just the easy laughter of people who shared a joke, the kind of laughter that came from years of small observations about someone they knew too well. I heard them gather their things, keys jingling, bags rustling, the sound of the side door opening and closing, car doors slamming in the driveway, engines starting, then silence. I lay on the bed for another 20 minutes. I didn't move, I barely breathed. The thing was, they weren't wrong about most of it. I did have the receipts in accordion folders, I did balance my checkbook, I did watch fishing shows and care about the lawn and probably talk too much about hardware. But they were wrong about one thing. They thought I was predictable because I was simple. They thought my routine meant I wasn't paying attention. They thought the man who'd spent 30 years running logistics for a mid-sized manufacturing company, the man who'd negotiated union contracts and managed supply chains and caught theft and fraud from people who thought they were smarter than him, they thought that man had just turned into some harmless old guy who didn't notice when his own kids were playing him. I got up from the bed, walked to the window, watched Trevor's SUV pull out of the driveway, followed by Kyle's sedan. Amy was in the passenger seat next to her husband. She was looking at her phone. The sun was setting behind the neighbor's house across the street, the Hendersons. I'd helped Bill Henderson install his deck 2 summers ago. We talked about college football and property taxes and whether the city council was going to approve that new strip mall on Route 9. I wondered if Bill knew what his kids were planning for him. I wondered if anyone ever really knew. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Text message from Amy. Thanks for the coffee, Dad. See you Sunday for dinner? I typed back, sounds good, sweetheart. Love you. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, love you too. I put the phone back in my pocket and went downstairs. The kitchen was clean. They'd washed their coffee cups and put them in the dish rack. Thoughtful, considerate, the kind of kids who didn't leave messes in their father's house. There was a notebook on the counter. Kyle's. He must have forgotten it. I picked it up, flipped it open. The first page had dates. October 19th, November 2nd, November 16th. Next to each date was a single word. Introduction, discussion, signature. Below that, a list of bullet points. Emphasize security. Reference health concerns. Mention family unity. I closed the notebook, put it back exactly where I'd found it. Then I went to the garage. I didn't have a new tool to show anyone, but I had something better. I had 30 years of documentation. Every contract I'd ever reviewed, every negotiation I'd ever studied, every trick I'd ever learned from people who tried to take advantage of someone they thought wasn't paying attention. I pulled down a box from the top shelf. My personal files, not the household stuff. The things I'd kept from my working years, notes, strategies, the kind of information you held on to because you never knew when you might need to remember how people operated when they thought they were in control. I sat down at my workbench and opened the box. They were right about one thing. I was predictable. But predictable didn't mean stupid. It just meant patient. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? Monday morning, I drove to Bledsoe's Hardware like I did every week, parked in the same spot near the back where the asphalt was cracked and weeds pushed through. I liked that spot. Nobody ever parked there because it was farthest from the door, which meant nobody ever dinged my truck with their car door. Inside, the store smelled like sawdust and motor oil and the bitter coffee they kept brewing by the register. Frank Bledsoe was behind the counter reading the newspaper. He looked up when the bell over the door chimed. Morning, Jack. Morning. I grabbed a cart even though I didn't need one. It was part of the routine. Push the cart down the aisles. Look at the things I'd looked at 100 times before. Sometimes buy something, sometimes not. The point wasn't the buying. The point was the looking. I found what I actually needed in aisle 7. 3/4-inch PVC coupling. The garbage disposal was leaking where the drain pipe connected, and I determined the fitting had cracked. Simple fix. $2 part. At the register, Frank rang it up without scanning it. He knew the prices by heart. "How's the family?" he asked. "Good. Everyone's good." "Kids doing all right?" "Kyle's busy with work. Amy's settling into married life." Frank nodded. He had 3 daughters, all grown, all moved away. He knew how it was. "They come by much?" "Often enough." He handed me my change. Exact count. No need to check it. "You know," he said, "my youngest, Rebecca, she's been talking about getting me to move down to Charlotte, closer to her. Says I'm getting too old to run this place by myself." "You thinking about it?" "Hell no." He laughed. "I told her I'll die in this store, probably behind this very counter. She doesn't like that answer, but it's the truth. A man's got to know where he belongs." I pocketed the change, picked up my small bag. "Some people don't like the truth," I said. "No," Frank agreed. "They don't." Outside, the parking lot was filling up. Monday morning, people getting their week started. I recognized most of the trucks, local contractors, guys who made their living fixing things. Good people. I was unlocking my door when I saw him. Kyle's car, parked 3 rows over. He wasn't in it. I scanned the lot. Didn't see him. I stood there for a moment, holding my keys. This wasn't his area. He worked downtown. His apartment was on the east side. There was no reason for him to be at Bledsoe's on a Monday morning, unless he was following me. I got in my truck, started it, sat there with my hands on the wheel. The smart move was to leave. Stick to the routine. Don't let him know I'd noticed. But I wanted to see what he'd do. I pulled out of my spot and drove slowly toward the exit. At the last second, I turned left instead of right, headed toward Main Street instead of home. In my rearview mirror, Kyle's sedan pulled out 2 cars back. I drove at exactly the speed limit, signaled every turn, made it easy for him to follow without being obvious. I ended up at Morton's Diner. I hadn't planned to go there, but it fit. It was the kind of place I went sometimes. Not part of the weekly routine, but not unusual either. I parked, went inside, took a booth by the window where I could see the parking lot. Kyle's car cruised past once, didn't stop, kept going. 5 minutes later, it came back from the other direction. This time it pulled into the gas station across the street. I ordered coffee and a Danish. Sat there eating slowly, watching. Kyle stayed in his car. He was on his phone, probably texting, probably telling Trevor and Amy that I deviated from my normal Monday, probably wondering if that meant anything. The waitress refilled my coffee. I knew her, Linda. She'd worked here for 15 years. Her son had gone to school with Kyle. "Haven't seen you in a while," she said. "Been busy." "Aren't we all?" She glanced out the window, saw Kyle's car. "That's your boy over there, isn't it? The older one." "Looks like his car." "Small town," she smiled. "You can't do anything without somebody noticing." I left her a good tip. Paid at the register. Walked out to my truck. Kyle's car was gone. I sat in the parking lot for a full minute, thinking. He'd followed me to see if I was doing anything unusual. He'd seen me go to the diner, which was semi-routine, nothing alarming. He'd left because there was nothing to learn. He was checking on me, making sure I was still predictable. I drove home, fixed the garbage disposal. It took 20 minutes. The new coupling fit perfectly. No more leak. After lunch, my phone rang. Kyle. "Hey, Dad." "Hey, son. What are you up to?" "Just fixed the disposal. Had a leak." "You should have called me. I could have sent someone." It was a $2 part. I handled it. "I know you can handle it. I'm just saying you don't have to. That's what I'm here for." "Noted." There was a pause. I could hear traffic in the background. He was in his car. "You went to Bledsoe's this morning?" he asked. "I did. Needed that part." "And then you stopped at Morton's?" I said nothing for a beat. Let the silence stretch. "Is there a reason you're keeping tabs on me?" I asked. "What? No, I just saw your truck. I was in the area." "What were you doing in that area on a Monday morning?" "Meeting a client, property showing. Look, I wasn't keeping tabs. I just happened to see you, that's all." "All right." Another pause. Longer this time. "Everything okay, Dad?" "Everything's fine." "Why?" "No reason. You just seem, I don't know, off." "I'm the same as I always am." "Yeah." He didn't sound convinced. "Okay, well, I'll let you go. See you Sunday?" "See you Sunday." I hung up, sat there in my kitchen, looked at my phone. He was nervous. I could hear it in his voice. He'd followed me expecting routine, got semi-routine, and now he was second-guessing himself, wondering if I'd noticed, wondering if I knew something. The uncertainty would eat at him. That was good. I spent the afternoon in the garage, not working on anything, just sitting at my workbench with that box of old files spread out in front of me. There was a document in there from 1998, a union negotiation. The union rep had been a guy named Hollis, smart as hell, 20 years of experience. He'd come into that meeting thinking he had us over a barrel. The company was behind on orders. The workers were restless. He had leverage. What Hollis didn't know was that we'd already negotiated a side deal with 2 of his committee members. Nothing illegal, nothing underhanded, just a conversation about what they personally needed. A shift change for one guy, a training program for another, small things that cost us nothing but bought us loyalty. When Hollis made his big play, those 2 committee members sided with management. Hollis was stunned. He'd been so focused on his leverage that he'd forgotten to secure his base. The negotiation collapsed in 40 minutes. I'd learned something that day. It wasn't about having power. It was about making sure the people around you thought they had power while you quietly removed the foundation they were standing on. Kyle thought he had me figured out. He thought the plan was solid because it was simple. Get Dad to sign some papers, move forward, clean and easy. What he didn't know was that I'd been watching them for months. I'd seen Amy's husband drinking too much at family dinners. I'd heard the tension in her voice when she talked about their finances. I'd noticed the way she looked at her phone when she thought nobody was watching. I'd seen Kyle's stress, the late-night calls he took in the other room, the way he checked his email compulsively. Something at work wasn't going right. He needed money, not wanted, needed. I'd seen the desperation they were both trying to hide, and desperation made people sloppy. My phone buzzed. Text from Amy. Still on for Sunday? I'm making pot roast. I texted back. Sounds perfect. She sent back a heart emoji. I put my phone down, stared at the document from 1998. Hollis had underestimated me because I'd let him. I'd sat in those meetings looking tired and confused. I'd asked simple questions. I'd let him think he was the smartest person in the room, right up until the moment he wasn't. I closed the file, put it back in the box. Sunday dinner was 6 days away. That gave me time to prepare. The thing about being underestimated was that it gave you room to work. People didn't watch you closely. They didn't question your moves. They thought they knew what you were going to do before you did it, and that was the best advantage you could have. Saturday morning, I drove to the storage unit. It was on the east side of town, past the industrial park where I used to work. The building was old and plain, the kind of place that charged by the square foot and didn't ask questions. Unit 247. I'd had it for 12 years. Paid automatically from my checking account. $75 a month. Nobody knew about it. Not the kids, not anyone. Inside were boxes, maybe 20 of them, labeled by year, 1992 through 2021. I pulled down the box marked 2003, opened it. Inside were folders full of documents from the year I dealt with an embezzlement case at the plant. An accounting clerk had been skimming money for 18 months before I caught him. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. He'd been smart about it, spread the theft across multiple accounts, made it look like normal discrepancies. But I'd found the pattern. And once I found it, I'd traced every dollar back to him, built an airtight case, handed it to the lawyers, and watched him get escorted out in handcuffs. The lesson from that year was simple. Paper trails don't lie. People do. But if you document everything, if you track every transaction, if you keep records nobody else thinks to keep, you can prove anything. I pulled out a folder, found what I was looking for, a form titled Financial Activity Log. I'd created it myself back then. Simple spreadsheet. Date, amount, account, description, verification. I'd used it to catch the embezzler. Now I was going to use it to document everything Kyle had been doing with the joint account. I took the folder, closed the box, pulled down another one marked 2008. That was the year of the union negotiation, the one with Hollis. Inside were my notes from those meetings, every word spoken, every offer made, every counter proposal. I documented it all because I'd known that when it fell apart, people would claim things had been said that hadn't. They'd try to rewrite history. The documentation had protected me then. It would protect me now. I took that folder too, loaded both into my truck, locked the unit, drove home. In the kitchen, I spread everything out on the table, started filling out the financial log, every transaction from the joint account over the past 8 months, every transfer in, every withdrawal out, the amounts, the dates, the patterns. When I was done, the picture was clear. Kyle had moved almost $38,000 through that account. Money that had come from his refinance, from his equity line, from his business account. Money he'd cycled through to make it look legitimate. But why? I pulled up the calculator on my phone, did the math. $38,000 plus whatever else he'd pulled from his other sources. It still wasn't enough to solve his problem. Not if Dave was right about Kyle burning $50,000 a month and bringing in half that, which meant Kyle needed something bigger, something substantial. The house was worth about $300,000, free and clear. If he could get access to it, he could refinance it or use it as collateral for a business loan. That would buy him another year, maybe 2, but it still wouldn't save his business. It would just delay the collapse. Unless he thought he could turn the business around if he just had more time. Unless he thought one big contract, one major client, would change everything. That was how desperation worked. It made people believe in miracles. I put the log aside, pulled out my notebook, started writing. Timeline. Sunday, they present the plan. Monday, Kyle likely files whatever I signed. Tuesday, Wednesday, he probably approaches a lender. Thursday, deal closes, money transfers. Friday, he thinks he saved what he doesn't know. The document won't be legally binding. Martin has blocked any property transfers. I've documented everything he's done. I know about Owen Stark. What happens next? I let him think it worked. I let him commit to whatever deal he's making. I let him tell people he saved his business. Then I pull the foundation out from under him. The question was how far to let it go. If I stopped him too soon, he'd just try again later. He'd be more careful. He'd find another way. But if I let him get all the way to the point where he'd committed to deals based on money he thought he had, where he'd made promises to investors and clients and employees, then when it collapsed, it wouldn't just be embarrassing, it would be devastating, and he'd know exactly who was responsible. My phone rang. Amy. Hey, Dad. Trevor and I are at the store. You need anything for tomorrow? I'm all set. You sure? I can grab whatever. I'm sure, sweetheart. Okay, we'll see you at 1? 1 o'clock. Love you. Love you too. I hung up, stared at the phone. Amy didn't know the full extent of what Kyle was doing. I was certain of that. She knew they were planning something. She knew it involved getting me to sign papers, but she thought it was legitimate. She thought it was for my own good. Kyle was using her relationship with me, using her belief that this was all normal and reasonable. That made it worse. I spent the rest of Saturday organizing everything, the financial logs, the property documents, the directive from Martin, the photos of Kyle's building, the information about Owen Stark, everything I needed to prove what was happening, everything I needed to show them when the time came, exactly how far they'd gone. By evening I was done. I put everything in a folder, locked it in my desk drawer, then I went to the kitchen and started preparing for Sunday dinner. I'd told Amy I didn't need anything, but that wasn't quite true. I did need something. I needed to look like a man who had no idea what was coming, a man who thought his kids were just coming over for pot roast and conversation. I needed to look predictable. So I set the table, pulled out the good plates, the ones my wife had liked, made sure everything was exactly the way it always was for family dinners. Then I went to bed early, set my alarm for 6. Tomorrow was going to be a long day, and it was going to end with my kids realizing that the man they thought they knew, the man they thought they could manage and manipulate and control, that man had been letting them think they were winning right up until the moment they lost everything. Sleep came easy. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious. I was ready. Sunday morning I was up at 6, made coffee, drank it standing at the kitchen window watching the sun come up over the Hendersons' house across the street. The pot roast went in at 8:30, low heat, 6 hours. Amy's recipe was good, but she always cooked it too fast. The meat came out tough. You needed patience with pot roast, same as anything else worth doing. At noon, I showered, put on the flannel shirt Amy had given me last Christmas, combed my hair, looked at myself in the mirror. 53 years old, gray in the beard, lines around the eyes, but still solid, still here, still the man who'd raised 2 kids and worked 30 years and built something that was supposed to last. They thought that man was fading, thought he needed management. They were wrong. At 12:45, Trevor's SUV pulled into the driveway, then Kyle's sedan right behind it. They'd coordinated arrival times, probably texted each other on the way over. I opened the front door before they knocked, smiled, hugged Amy, shook hands with Trevor, clapped Kyle on the shoulder. Come in, roast is almost ready. In the kitchen, Amy checked the pot, nodded approval. Smells perfect, Dad. You taught me well. Trevor and Kyle stood by the counter looking uncomfortable, men who didn't know what to do in kitchens. I handed them beers, they took them gratefully. We made small talk. Weather, football, the neighbor's new fence, normal things, easy things. Amy set the table. I carved the roast. Everything was routine, everything was exactly what it always was. We sat down at 1 o'clock, said Grace. Ate. The food was good. Amy had made roasted vegetables to go with it. Kyle complimented the potatoes. Trevor talked about a golf game, normal, easy, but I could see the tension. Kyle kept glancing at his watch. Amy was eating too fast. Trevor kept clearing his throat. They were waiting for the right moment to bring it up. I didn't make them wait long. So, I said, setting down my fork, what's this really about? They all stopped eating, looked at each other. Kyle spoke first. What do you mean? Come on. You three show up at exactly the same time. You're all nervous. There's something you want to talk about. Let's talk about it. Another glance between them. Amy touched Kyle's arm. He nodded. Okay. Kyle pushed his plate back. You're right. There is something. We've been talking, the three of us, and we think it's time to have a conversation about planning ahead. Planning what? Your future. Making sure everything's organized, protected. You've worked hard your whole life, Dad. We want to make sure that work doesn't go to waste. I'm 53, not 90. We know, this isn't about age. It's about being smart, being prepared. You taught us that. Amy jumped in. We just want to help, Dad. We want to make sure you're taken care of, that nothing falls through the cracks. What cracks? Kyle pulled out a folder from his bag, set it on the table. We talked to an estate planning attorney, got some advice. There are some documents we think you should sign. Nothing major, just updates. Power of attorney, some property stuff. It's all standard. He slid the folder toward me. I didn't open it, just looked at it. What kind of property stuff? Just updating the deed on the house, making sure it can transfer smoothly if anything happens, and maybe setting up a trust, so everything's clean, no probate, no hassle. Who would be trustee? We thought it could be both of us, Kyle gestured to Amy. That way it's fair. We both have a say. And what exactly would you have a say in? Just managing things, making sure bills get paid, property gets maintained, you know, the normal stuff. I picked up the folder, opened it. The first document was titled Durable Power of Attorney. I read the first paragraph. Legal language. Dense, but clear enough. It gave Kyle and Amy complete control over my financial decisions. Immediately. Not in the future. Now. I flipped to the second document. Property trust agreement. Same thing. It transferred the house to a trust controlled by both kids. Effective upon my signature. The third document was a beneficiary update form for my retirement account, changing the contingent beneficiaries to primary, meaning they'd have access while I was still alive if they could demonstrate I was incapacitated. I read all three documents slowly, carefully. Nobody spoke. When I finished, I closed the folder, set it down. This isn't estate planning, I said. This is you taking control of everything I own. That's not how we see it, Kyle said quickly. This is about partnership, about making sure we're all on the same page. Why do you need control of my house right now? Why do you need access to my retirement account? We don't need it. This is just in case, just if something happens. What's going to happen? Nothing. Hopefully nothing. But people get sick. People have accidents. We want to make sure that if something does happen, we can help you without jumping through legal hoops. And it has nothing to do with your business? The room went silent. Kyle's face changed, hardened. What are you talking about? Your LLC, the lease downtown, the money you've been cycling through the joint account, the meetings with Owen Stark. Trevor looked confused. Amy looked shocked. Kyle looked like he'd been punched. How do you know about that? Kyle asked quietly. I pay attention. I always have. You just thought I didn't. Dad? Let me ask you something. How much debt are you in? Kyle said nothing. $50,000 a month overhead. $25,000 in revenue. That's what 6 months of operations. You're probably $200,000 in the red, maybe more, and you thought you could use my house as collateral to get a loan from Stark to cover it. Amy turned to Kyle. Is that true? Kyle's jaw was tight. It's more complicated than that. It's not complicated, I said. You're failing, you're desperate, and you thought you could fix it by taking what's mine. It's not taking, Kyle said. His voice was rising. You're our father. This is family money, family property. We're not stealing from you. We're trying to save something we built, something that could provide for all of us. With my assets, without asking, without telling me the truth. Because you would have said no. Kyle stood up. You would have told me it was too risky. You would have given me some lecture about being responsible. You would have let my business collapse because you don't believe in taking chances. I would have said no because it's a bad bet, because Stark doesn't give out loans. He takes businesses, he buys them for nothing and strips them for parts. And you're so desperate you can't even see that he's setting you up to fail so he can take whatever you have left. You don't know that. I know exactly that, because I've seen 100 guys like Stark, and I've seen 100 guys like you think they're smarter than they are. Amy was crying. Trevor had his head in his hands. Kyle was standing there shaking. Sign the papers, Kyle said. Please, just sign them. Let me save this. Let me prove you wrong. No. Dad, no. And even if I did sign them, it wouldn't matter. I've already filed a directive with the county. Nothing you have me sign is legally valid unless it goes through my attorney, so those papers are worthless. Kyle stared at me. When did you do that? Thursday. You've known since Thursday? I've known since last Sunday, when I heard you all talking in this kitchen about how predictable I am, how manageable I am, how you could get me to sign anything because I never read what I'm signing. Amy looked up, mascara running down her face. We weren't trying to hurt you. No, you were trying to use me. That's different. Kyle picked up the folder, threw it across the room, papers scattered. You're letting me drown, your own son, and you're just standing there watching. You drowned yourself. I'm just refusing to jump in with you. Kyle grabbed his keys, headed for the door. Where are you going? Amy called. To find another way, because clearly I can't count on family. He slammed the door behind him. A moment later, his car started. Tires squealed as he pulled out of the driveway. Trevor stood up. I should go talk to him. No, I said. Let him go. He needs to figure this out himself. Mr. Calloway, you don't understand. If Kyle's business fails, it's going to take Amy down too. They're co-signed on credit cards, on loans. If he defaults, it hits her credit, her finances, everything. Amy looked at him. What are you talking about? Trevor looked trapped. He needed capital. He asked me to co-sign. I said no, so he asked you. I never co-signed anything. He forged your signature. I saw the documents. I told him it was wrong, but he said it didn't matter because he was going to pay everything back before you ever found out. Amy stood up, walked out. I heard the bathroom door close. Lock. Trevor looked at me. I'm sorry. I should have told someone. I should have stopped him. You didn't do anything wrong. I enabled him. I knew what he was doing, and I didn't say anything because I didn't want to cause family drama. He laughed bitterly. Look how that worked out. He left. The front door closed quietly this time. I stood in the kitchen alone. The pot roast was still on the table, half-eaten, getting cold. I cleaned up, put away the food, washed the dishes, dried them, put them in the cupboard. Amy came out of the bathroom eventually. Her eyes were red. What do I do? She asked. You file a police report, identity theft. Let them handle it. He's my brother. He's also a criminal, and if you don't report it, you're liable for whatever debt he racked up in your name. She nodded slowly. Will you come with me? If you want. I want. We drove to the police station, filed the report. The officer who took the statement was young, maybe 30. He looked uncomfortable dealing with family matters. But he did his job, got all the information, said they'd investigate. I drove Amy home, pulled into her driveway. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it, for thinking you needed us to take care of you, for not seeing what Kyle was doing. You were trying to help. I understand that. Were we? Or were we just trying to make ourselves feel important? Does it matter now? She shook her head. Got out. Went inside without looking back. I drove home, parked in the driveway, sat there for a while. It was done. The plan had collapsed. Kyle knew I'd blocked him. Amy knew what he'd done. There was no recovering from this, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like something broken that couldn't be fixed. I went inside, sat at the kitchen table in the dark. My phone buzzed. Text from Kyle. You just destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. Another text came through a minute later. I'm done with all of this. With you. I set the phone down, stared at it. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. This was supposed to be a lesson, a wake-up call, something that taught them respect without destroying the relationship. But Dave Henderson had been right. Sometimes the foundation needs to be torn down completely before you can rebuild it right. The question was whether there'd be anything left to rebuild. Monday morning, I didn't hear from Kyle. Didn't hear from Amy either. Just silence. I went to Bledsoe's, bought nothing, just walked the aisles like always. Frank asked if I was all right. I said I was fine. He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. At home, I tried to work on small projects. Fixed a loose doorknob, tightened the hinges on the cabinet, things that needed doing, things I could control. My phone rang at 2, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Calloway, this is Owen Stark. I believe you know who I am. I said nothing. I'm calling about your son, Kyle. He came to see me this morning. He's in a difficult position. I'm sure you're aware. What do you want? I want to help him, but I need certain assurances. Assets I can leverage if things don't work out. He mentioned the house. Your house. And I understand there was some resistance to using it as collateral. He can't use my house. He doesn't have access to it. Yes, he explained the situation. The directive you filed. Very clever. But it does create a problem. He needs capital and he has no way to secure it, which means his business fails, which means he defaults on several loans he's already taken, which means bankruptcy, ruined credit, no future in this industry. That's his problem. It's also your problem, Mr. Calloway, because when he files for bankruptcy, all his creditors will come looking for recovery, and they'll discover that he's been cycling money through a joint account with his father, money that came from questionable sources, and they'll start asking questions about where that money went, whether you knew about it, whether you were complicit. I wasn't. Doesn't matter. The appearance of complicity is enough to trigger an investigation. IRS, FBI, if they think it's fraud. Your life becomes very complicated very fast. Even if you're eventually cleared, the process takes years, costs tens of thousands in legal fees, destroys your reputation. I grip the phone. What are you offering? Simple solution. You remove the directive. Let Kyle use the house as collateral. I give him a loan at reasonable terms. He rebuilds his business, pays me back, everyone wins. Or you refuse, I pull my offer, his business collapses, and we all end up in court. Your choice. I'll think about it. You have until end of business tomorrow. After that, my offer expires. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the wall. This was Stark's game. Create pressure, force a decision, make the victim think they had no choice. But I did have a choice. I called Martin Griggs. Jack, what's going on? I told him everything. The conversation with Stark, the threats, the timeline. Martin was quiet for a long moment. Okay. First, Stark is bluffing. Using a joint account isn't illegal. Even if Kyle was moving questionable money through it, you can't be held liable unless there's proof you knew about it, and from what you've told me, you can prove you didn't know, because you filed the directive the moment you found out. What about the investigation? He can report whatever he wants, but the authorities have better things to do than chase down baseless accusations. Stark knows this. He's counting on you not knowing this. He wants you scared. What do I do? Nothing. You ignore him. You keep the directive in place. You let Kyle's business fail. It's not your responsibility to save him from his own mistakes. And if Stark follows through, then we deal with it. But he won't, because he has no leverage. He's a vulture looking for easy prey. You're not easy. So he'll move on to someone who is. I hung up. Felt better. Martin was right. This was a bluff. But that didn't change the fact that Kyle was still drowning. And now Stark had made it clear that if I didn't help, the drowning would get worse. I called Amy. Dad? I talked to Stark. Who? The investor Kyle's been working with. He called me, threatened me, tried to force me to remove the directive. What did you say? I said I'd think about it, but I'm not going to do it. Kyle needs to handle this himself. He can't. He's too far gone. He called me last night. He was drunk. He was talking about ending it, just walking away from everything. Where is he now? I don't know. He won't answer his phone. Trevor went by his apartment, but he wasn't there. He's probably at his office. I don't know where that is. I do. I hung up, got in my truck, drove downtown. Kyle's building was mostly dark. The ground floor businesses were closed for the day, but I could see light in the second floor corner unit. I parked, went inside, took the stairs. The office door was unlocked. I pushed it open. Kyle was sitting at a desk in the middle of an empty room. The space was bigger than I'd expected. Windows on 2 walls, high ceilings, modern, expensive, and completely empty. No furniture except the desk and chair, no computers, no files, nothing. Kyle looked up when I came in. He looked terrible, unshaven, red eyes. His shirt was wrinkled like he'd slept in it. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Stark called me." "Yeah, I figured he would. He threatened me, tried to blackmail me into removing the directive." Kyle laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Welcome to my world. That's what he does. Makes promises, then changes the terms. Then threatens you when you push back. I've been dealing with that for 3 months. Why didn't you tell me? What was I supposed to say? Hey, Dad, I screwed up. I built a business I can't afford. I took money from a shark who's now blackmailing me. Can you help?" You would have lectured me about responsibility, about living within my means, about how you never made mistakes like this. I made plenty of mistakes. Not like this. I looked around the empty office. What happened to the furniture? The employees? Gone. I couldn't make payroll 2 weeks ago. They quit. Took the computers with them. Said I owed them back wages. They're probably right. He leaned back in the chair. This whole thing was supposed to work. I had a plan. I had clients lined up. I just needed capital to get started. But the capital dried up. The clients went with other companies. And I kept thinking if I just pushed a little harder, stayed open a little longer, something would break my way. It doesn't work like that. I know that now. He rubbed his face. Stark's pulling his offer, isn't he? That's why he called you. Last-ditch effort to squeeze something out of this mess. Yes. So it's over. The business, the money I borrowed, everything. I'm going to declare bankruptcy, lose everything. And it's going to take Amy down with me because I forged her signature on those loans. He looked at me. You were right. About all of it. I was drowning. And I was trying to drag you in with me. I sat down on the floor. The office had no other furniture. What were you trying to build here? I asked. Property management company. I saw a gap in the market. Small commercial properties that were too small for the big firms, but too big for individual landlords to manage. I thought I could fill that niche, build relationships, grow slowly. What went wrong? I grew too fast, got this office before I had the revenue to support it, hired employees before I had the clients to bill. I thought projecting success would attract success. Instead, it just attracted debt. We sat in silence. The city lights glowed through the windows. Car horns blared from the street below. Normal life continuing while we dealt with collapse. I can't fix this for you, I said. Even if I wanted to. Even if I removed the directive and let you use the house, it wouldn't be enough. You'd burn through that money in 6 months and we'd be right back here. I know. But I can help you manage the collapse, make it less catastrophic, talk to the creditors, work out payment plans, help you file bankruptcy properly so it doesn't destroy you completely. Kyle looked at me. Why would you do that? Because you're my son. Because you made mistakes, but you're not a bad person. And because letting you drown completely doesn't help anyone. I thought you wanted me to figure it out myself. I wanted you to learn a lesson, not destroy your life. There's a difference. Kyle's eyes were wet. He looked away. I'm sorry. For all of it. For trying to use you. For thinking you were too old to understand. For being an arrogant idiot who thought he knew better. Apology accepted. Now let's figure out how to clean up this mess. We stayed in that empty office for 3 hours, made lists, called creditors, started the process. It wasn't a solution. It was damage control. But it was something. At 8 o'clock, Kyle locked up. We walked out together. You want to get dinner? I asked. I don't think I can eat. Coffee then. There's a place down the street. We went to a diner, ordered coffee, sat in a booth by the window. Kyle looked exhausted, but less broken than before. What are you going to tell Amy? He asked. The truth? That you screwed up, that you're going to make it right, that it's going to take time, but you'll get through it. She's going to hate me. She's your sister. She'll forgive you, eventually. Kyle stirred his coffee. You could have let me burn. You could have just walked away. Why didn't you? Because revenge without redemption is just cruelty, and I'm not cruel. You're a better man than I am. No, I'm just older, and I've made enough mistakes to know how to recover from them. We finished our coffee. I paid. We walked out to the parking lot. Kyle paused by his car. Thank you for not giving up on me, for not letting me give up on myself. That's what fathers do. He drove away. I stood there in the parking lot watching his taillights disappear. This wasn't the ending I'd planned. This wasn't the dramatic collapse I'd imagined, but it was something better. It was real, and maybe that was the point. Tuesday morning, I met with Martin Griggs again. Brought Kyle with me. We spent 2 hours going over his financial situation. The debt, the creditors, the legal exposure. Martin was brutally honest. You're looking at bankruptcy. Total liquidation. You'll lose the business, your apartment, everything except basic personal property. Your credit will be destroyed for 7 to 10 years. Kyle took it without flinching. What about Amy? The forged signatures? She filed a police report. That protects her legally. But morally, you owe her for the damage you've caused. Once you're through bankruptcy and rebuilding, you need to make it right. I will. We filed the bankruptcy paperwork that afternoon. Kyle signed everything with shaking hands. It was just the end of one thing and the beginning of something else. After we left Martin's office, Kyle and I sat in my truck. What now? He asked. Now you start over. Find a job. Something stable. Work for someone else until you learn how to run a business properly. Nobody's going to hire me. Not with my background, not with a bankruptcy. You'd be surprised. A lot of people have failed businesses. A lot of people have debt. What matters is how you handle the recovery. And how do I do that? One day at a time. One payment at a time. One right decision after 100 wrong ones. I drove him to his apartment. Helped him pack the things he was allowed to keep. Clothes, some personal items, not much. The apartment was nice. 2 bedrooms, good neighborhood. He'd been living above his means from the start. Where am I going to live? He asked. With me, temporarily, until you get on your feet. Dad, I can't. Yes, you can. You're my son. That doesn't change because you made mistakes. He didn't argue, just loaded his things into my truck. At my house, I showed him the guest room. It's not much, but it's yours for as long as you need it. I'll pay rent. We'll talk about that once you're working. That night, Amy came over. She and Kyle sat at the kitchen table while I made coffee. Neither of them spoke at first. Finally, Amy said, I'm still angry at you. I know. You stole my identity. You ruined my credit. You lied to me. I did. And I'm supposed to just forgive that? No. You're supposed to let me earn your forgiveness, however long that takes. Amy looked at me. What do you think? I think he's sincere. I think he knows he screwed up. And I think he's going to spend the next few years proving he's better than his worst mistake. She turned back to Kyle. If you ever lie to me again, if you ever use my name for anything without asking, if you ever put me in this position again, we're done. Completely. Do you understand? I understand. I mean it. I'll cut you out of my life and never look back. I understand, and it won't happen again. They sat there looking at each other, years of sibling history hanging between them, trust that had been broken and might never fully repair. But Amy finally nodded. Okay, we'll see. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, Kyle looked for work, applied to dozens of places, got rejection after rejection. His bankruptcy was public record. His business failure was known in the industry. Nobody wanted to take a chance on him. Finally, he got an interview with a property management firm. Not as an executive, as an assistant manager. Entry level, $30,000 a year. He came home that night looking shell-shocked. I got the job. That's good. It's half what I was making before, a quarter of what I thought I'd be making by now. But it's honest work, and it's a chance to rebuild. He started the following Monday. Came home every night exhausted. Not from physical labor, from humility, from learning to take orders from people younger than him, from accepting that he was starting over at the bottom. But he kept showing up. Amy came by one Saturday, brought lunch. The 3 of us sat on the back deck eating sandwiches. Trevor and I are separating, she said. Kyle and I both looked at her. What happened? I asked. Nothing dramatic. No fight. We just realized we got married too fast for the wrong reasons. We're better as friends than as spouses. So we're getting a divorce. Amicable. Simple. I'm sorry, Kyle said. Don't be. It's the right choice. Sometimes you have to admit you made a mistake and correct it, even if it's embarrassing, even if it's hard. She looked at Kyle when she said it. He understood the message. I'm filing papers to pay you back, he said. For the credit card debt, the loans, all of it. It's going to take years. But I'm going to do it. You don't have to? Yes, I do. You're my sister. I owe you more than money, but money's where I start. Amy's eyes got wet. She looked away, composed herself. Okay, I accept. They talked for a while, about nothing important, work, weather, the neighbor's new dog. But underneath it was something else. the slow process of rebuilding trust. After Amy left, Kyle and I cleaned up the lunch dishes. "You think she'll ever really forgive me?" he asked. "I think forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. And you're in that process now. Whether it succeeds depends on what you do next. Every day, every choice." That's exhausting. Being human is exhausting, but it's worth it. 3 months passed. Kyle kept working, kept paying bills, kept showing up. He moved out of my house in January, found a small apartment on the south side, nothing fancy, but it was his, paid for with honest money. Amy and Trevor finalized their divorce in February. She started dating someone new, a teacher, quiet guy, completely different from Trevor. She seemed happy. I kept going to Bledsoe's every Monday, kept my routine, but now when people asked how my family was doing, I had complicated answers. Frank noticed. "Sounds like you've been through something." "We have." "Everyone come out okay?" "We're working on it." He nodded. "That's all you can do. Work on it. Keep showing up. Eventually things settle into something you can live with." Voice of experience? My middle daughter didn't talk to me for 5 years. Thought I'd sided with her mother in the divorce. Thought I'd betrayed her. Nothing I said could convince her otherwise, so I just kept sending birthday cards. Kept calling on holidays. Kept showing up. Until finally one day she called me back. Said she'd been wrong. Said she was sorry. And we rebuilt from there. How long did that take? 5 years of silence. 3 more years of slow reconciliation. 8 years total. But now she's my closest kid. We talk every week. Turns out the relationships that break are sometimes the ones that get rebuilt the strongest, because both sides know what it's like to lose each other. I thought about that on the drive home, about broken things that could be rebuilt stronger, about whether my relationship with Kyle and Amy would be one of those. Time would tell. But at least we had time. At least we were still talking, still showing up, still trying. That was more than some families had. March brought warmer weather. The snow melted. Grass started growing again. I spent a Saturday working in the yard, trimming hedges, clearing gutters, the normal spring maintenance. Kyle showed up around noon, parked in the driveway, got out carrying a toolbox. "Thought you might need help," he said. "I can manage." "I know, but I want to help anyway." We worked together, didn't talk much, just the comfortable silence of people who knew each other well, father and son doing what needed doing. When we finished, I made sandwiches. We sat on the back deck eating. "I got a promotion," Kyle said. "Assistant to associate manager. Small bump in pay, but it's progress." "That's good." "My boss said I have good instincts, that I understand property management better than most people who've been doing it for years. She asked where I learned." "What did you tell her?" "That I learned from failure, that I ran my own business into the ground and learned more from that than I ever could have from success." He paused. She appreciated the honesty, said most people try to hide their failures. She respected that I owned mine. "That's growth. I've been thinking about what you said, about how relationships that break can get rebuilt stronger. I want that with you, with Amy. I want us to be closer than we were before all this happened. That takes time. I have time. I'm not in a hurry anymore. I'm not trying to force success or rush past the hard parts. I'm just showing up, doing the work, being present. That's all anyone can ask." We sat there watching the sun move across the yard. Birds were singing in the trees. The Hendersons' dog was barking at something. Normal life. Simple things. The kind of things I'd taken for granted before everything fell apart. "I'm sorry," Kyle said quietly. "I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for trying to manipulate you, for thinking you were weak, for almost destroying our relationship because I was too proud to ask for help. I forgive you. I forgave you months ago. Now you need to forgive yourself. I'm working on it. Keep working." Amy arrived an hour later, brought her new boyfriend. His name was David. He taught high school English, liked hiking and reading and old movies. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye. I liked him immediately. The 4 of us sat on the deck talking about work and books and plans for the summer. Easy conversation, the kind of conversation families have when nobody's hiding anything. At one point, David excused himself to take a call. Kyle and Amy and I sat together. "This is nice," Amy said. "All of us here. No drama, no secrets, just family." "It took us a while to get here," Kyle said. "But we got here. That's what matters." I looked at both of them, my kids, grown and complicated and flawed, but still mine, still here. I'm proud of you both, I said. Not for being perfect. For being willing to fail and learn and try again. That takes courage. Amy reached over and squeezed my hand. Kyle smiled. David came back. We talked for another hour, then they left, promised to come back the following weekend. I stood in the driveway watching them drive away. The sun was setting, the sky was orange and purple. Beautiful. Inside, the house was quiet. I cleaned up the deck, washed the dishes, put everything away. Then I went to my desk, pulled out the folder I'd created months ago, the one with all the documentation of Kyle's financial mistakes, the evidence I'd gathered, the timeline I'd built. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I fed it into the shredder, page by page, all of it, because it didn't matter anymore. The past was done. What mattered now was the future, and the future, I thought, might actually be good. 6 months later, I was at Bledsoe's when my phone rang. Kyle. Dad, are you sitting down? I'm standing in the hardware store. Why? I just got offered a partnership in the firm. They want me to help open a new division managing small commercial properties. It's exactly what I was trying to build before, except this time I have backing and experience, and I'm not doing it alone. I walked outside, sat on the bench by the entrance. That's incredible. I know. And I know I don't deserve it. Not after everything I did wrong. But my boss said I've proven myself. She said I've shown more growth in 6 months than most people show in years. She said she trusts me. I'm proud of you, son. I couldn't have done it without you refusing to enable my mistakes, without you teaching me what real accountability looks like. I would have kept drowning if you'd thrown me a rope. Instead, you taught me how to swim. We talked for a few more minutes, made plans to celebrate that weekend. Then he had to go. Another call coming in. Business. I sat on that bench feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Not for myself. For my kids. Frank came out of the store, saw me sitting there. You look like you got good news. I did. Want to share? I told him about Kyle, about the partnership, about how far he'd come from the man who'd tried to steal my house to save a failing business. Frank nodded. That's how it works sometimes. You have to hit bottom before you can rebuild, and the people who really love you, they don't catch you before you hit. They just make sure you have the tools to climb back up. That's what I was trying to do. Sounds like it worked. I went inside, bought the part I needed, drove home. That Saturday everyone came over, Kyle and Amy and David. We grilled burgers in the backyard, drank beer, told stories, laughed about old memories and made new ones. At one point, Amy pulled me aside. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on us. For holding the line when we needed you to. For being the kind of father who teaches lessons instead of just giving lectures. I'm not sure I taught anything. You both figured it out yourselves. You created the conditions for us to figure it out. That's what good parents do. They don't solve their kids' problems. They just make sure their kids have what they need to solve the problems themselves. She hugged me, tight, like she used to when she was little. The sun was setting again. Same orange and purple sky, same beautiful evening, but everything felt different now, lighter, better. Kyle came over carrying 2 beers, handed me one. To new beginnings, he said. To lessons learned, Amy added. To family, I said. We clinked bottles, drank, stood there watching the sun go down. In the distance, I could hear David laughing at something, the neighbor's dog barking, cars passing on the street, normal sounds, regular life, the kind of life you fought to keep when everything tried to tear it apart. I'd spent months planning revenge, building evidence, preparing to destroy my kid's scheme. But in the end, the best revenge hadn't been destruction. It had been refusing to be destroyed. It had been standing firm while they learned the hardest lessons of their lives. It had been being their father, even when they tried to make me their victim. The evidence was gone. The anger was gone. The hurt was fading. What remained was this: a backyard, a barbecue, 2 kids who'd made terrible mistakes and learned from them, and a father who'd refused to let those mistakes define their relationship forever. Kyle's business partnership started the following month. He threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd brought to his failed venture. But this time it was tempered with wisdom, with caution, with the hard-won knowledge of how quickly things could fall apart. Amy got promoted at her job, something in marketing. She was good at it, creative, strategic. Dating David seriously now, talking about the future. I kept my routines, hardware store on Mondays, coffee at Morton's, working in the garage. But now those routines had more meaning. They weren't just habits, they were anchors. They were the steady foundation that had allowed me to weather the storm when everything else was chaos. One evening in late summer, I was sitting on the back deck when Kyle's car pulled into the driveway. He walked around back carrying a six-pack. "Got a minute?" "Always." He opened 2 beers, handed me one, sat down. "I've been thinking about what happened last year, about how close I came to destroying everything, and I realized something." "What's that?" "You knew exactly what I was doing the whole time. You could have stopped me at any point. But you let me keep going, let me commit, let me think I was getting away with it. Why?" I took a drink, thought about how to answer. "Because if I'd stopped you immediately, you would have just tried again later, more carefully, more secretly. You needed to go all the way to the edge. You needed to look over and see what was waiting for you. Only then would you understand why you couldn't go there. That was risky. I could have taken you down with me. You couldn't. I'd protected myself. But even if you could have, it would have been worth it, because the alternative was losing you slowly, watching you make the same mistakes over and over, never learning, never growing, just repeating the pattern until there was nothing left of you." Kyle was quiet for a long time. "I never thanked you for that, for taking the risk, for trusting that I could learn. You're my son. That's what fathers do. Not all fathers. No, not all." We sat there as the evening turned to night. The stars came out. The air got cooler. Summer transitioning to fall. "You know what the crazy thing is?" Kyle said. "I thought I was so smart. I thought I had it all figured out. I looked at your life and thought it was small, simple, predictable. I thought I could do better. And now? Now I realize your life wasn't simple. It was disciplined. It wasn't predictable. It was consistent. And those are harder, much harder. Anyone can chase success. It takes a different kind of strength to maintain stability." "You're learning." "I'm trying." He finished his beer, stood up. "I should go. Early meeting tomorrow." "Good luck with it." "Thanks, Dad. For everything. For being tougher than I thought you were. For being smarter than I gave you credit for. For being exactly what I needed even when I didn't know I needed it." He left. I stayed on the deck. Finished my beer, watched the stars. The house was paid off. The retirement account was secure. The directive was still in place. Everything I'd protected was still protected. But more important than any of that, my kids were okay. Damaged, but learning. Humbled, but growing. Flawed, but honest. That was worth more than any property, any money, any plan. I went inside, locked the doors, turned off the lights, went to bed. Tomorrow I'd go to Bledsoe's, buy whatever small thing needed buying, come home and work on whatever small thing needed fixing. The same routine I'd kept for years. The routine that had driven my kids to think I was out of touch. The routine that had made them underestimate me. The routine that had saved us all. Because in the end, it wasn't the dramatic moments that defined us. It wasn't the confrontations or the revelations or the big speeches. It was the small choices, the daily discipline, the quiet consistency of showing up and doing what needed to be done. That was what my kids had learned. Not through my words, through my actions, through watching me refuse to abandon my principles even when it would have been easier to compromise. They'd tried to take advantage of who they thought I was. Instead, they'd discovered who I actually was. And that discovery had changed them more than any revenge I could have planned. I closed my eyes. Let sleep come. In the morning, I'd wake up and start again, same as always. Because that's what survivors do. They show up, they do the work, they keep going, and eventually, if you're lucky, the people who tried to tear you down become the people who build you up instead. That was the real victory. Not destruction, reconstruction, not revenge, redemption, not an ending, a beginning.